The text message from my sister came while I was in the middle of a $40 million real estate negotiation. Mom and Dad need help. Big trouble. Call ASAP. I glanced at my Patek Philippe watch, the one my family thought was a cheap knockoff, and smiled slightly at the timing. Across the table, my lawyer raised an eyebrow questioningly. I shook my head and returned to the contracts before us. 3 hours later, after securing the downtown property that would become my newest luxury hotel, I finally called Sophia back. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "I've been trying to reach you all morning." "Let me guess, another shift at that coffee shop." I leaned back in my office chair, taking in the Manhattan skyline through my penthouse window. "Something like that." "What's the emergency?" "Dad's company is in trouble. They need a loan, just a small one, around $5 million. I know you can't help, but I thought you should know. I'm trying to reach out to everyone." I could picture her pacing in her designer heels, probably in her suburban home that our parents had helped her buy. The successful daughter. The one who had made good choices. "What kind of trouble?" I asked, pulling up my father's company financials on my laptop. Being the secret owner of the building where his business rented space had its advantages. Bad investments, some contracts fell through. They might lose everything. Her voice cracked. The house, the company, everything Dad built. I studied the numbers on my screen. She wasn't exaggerating. My father's construction company was hemorrhaging money. Poor management, overextended projects, and a series of risky ventures had left them on the brink of bankruptcy. "That's terrible," I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. "Have you asked William to help?" William, my older brother, was an investment banker who never missed an opportunity to remind everyone of his success. He said he's overextended in the market right now. Sophia's tone turned bitter. "Can you believe it? After everything Mom and Dad did for him." I thought back to 10 years ago, when I told our parents I wanted to pursue art instead of joining the family business. The argument that followed still echoed in my memory. No daughter of mine is going to waste her life painting pictures. Dad had thundered, his face red with rage. "You want to be an artist? Fine, but don't expect any support from us." Mom had sat quietly, as she always did during these confrontations. But her words afterward cut deeper than Dad's anger. "We're so disappointed in you, Lily. We thought you were smarter than this." I'd left that night with nothing but my savings from my part-time jobs and a degree in fine arts that my parents considered worthless. Sophie and William had watched from the doorway, their faces a mixture of pity and embarrassment for their wayward sister. What my family didn't know, what they'd never bothered to find out, was that I'd already sold my first painting for $50,000. My art had caught the eye of a wealthy collector during my senior showcase, and he'd become my first patron. While my parents told relatives I was finding myself and probably serving coffee somewhere, I was building an empire. My paintings quickly became sought-after pieces, commanding higher and higher prices. But I didn't stop there. I invested my earnings wisely, starting with small commercial properties and gradually expanding into luxury real estate. Each success was carefully hidden behind shell companies and discreet investment firms. As far as my family knew, I was still struggling to make ends meet, occasionally selling a painting here and there. "Hello. Are you even listening?" Sophia's voice snapping back to the present. "This is serious, Lily. They might have to sell the house." The house. The sprawling colonial where we'd grown up, where I'd first discovered my love of art, and where I'd been told I'd never amount to anything. "That's awful," I said. "When are they telling everyone?" "They're calling a family meeting tonight. Dinner at 7. They want everyone there." She paused. "I know you probably can't afford it, but I'll pay for your Uber if you want to come." I glanced at my Bentley's keys on the desk. "That's sweet of you. I'll manage." After hanging up, I sat in silence for a moment, looking around my office. Original artworks, some mine, some from artists I now sponsored, adorned the walls. Models of my real estate projects lined the shelves. The irony wasn't lost on me. My parents' company was renting space in a building I owned through one of my many corporations. 10 years of hidden success. 10 years of listening to their backhanded comments about my lifestyle choices. 10 years of watching them pour money into my siblings' ventures while treating me like a cautionary tale. Even now, I could hear my father's voice from our last family dinner. "Well, at least Lily serves excellent coffee. That art degree was good for something." My intercom buzzed. "Ms. Chen, The architects are here for the hotel meeting. Tell them I'll be right there. I stood up, straightening my Armani suit, another piece my family assumed was secondhand. And Clara? Clear my evening schedule. I have a family dinner to attend. The family home looked exactly as it had 10 years ago, down to the slightly crooked mailbox my father always meant to fix. I parked my Bentley around the corner and walked the last block, maintaining the illusion of poverty they'd all come to expect. William's Mercedes and Sophia's Range Rover sat in a driveway like gleaming symbols of success. Success that was about to be tested. Mom opened the door, her face drawn with worry. "Oh, Lily, you came." She hugged me briefly, then stepped back to examine my appearance with practiced disappointment. "That suit, is it new?" "Thrift store find," I lied smoothly. Amazing what people give away. The living room was tense. William stood by the fireplace, trying to look important despite the worry lines creasing his forehead. Sophia sat primly on the edge of the sofa, her designer purse clutched tightly in her lap. Dad occupied his usual armchair, but the authority he usually projected was dimmed, replaced by something I'd never seen before. Fear. "Now that everyone's here," he began, his voice rough. "Your mother and I have something to tell you." What followed was a carefully edited version of the truth. Business setbacks, temporary cash flow issues, unexpected market changes. The reality in the financial documents I'd reviewed was much darker, but I kept quiet and listened. "We need a family solution," Mom added, her hands twisting in her lap. "We thought perhaps if everyone contributed." "I've already explained my situation," William cut in quickly. "My assets are tied up in long-term investments. I can't liquidate without taking a massive loss." Sophia nodded eagerly. "And with the kids' private school tuition and the new pool installation." They all carefully avoided looking at me. Why would they? The struggling artist could barely afford her own rent, let alone help with a multi-million-dollar problem. If they only knew that their temporary cash flow issue was partly due to the fact that I'd recently raised their building's rent through my management company, or that 3 of their failed contracts were with developers I quietly warned about their declining work quality. Sometimes revenge is best served cold and silent. As my family continued discussing their financial crisis, I thought about the portfolio sitting in my private office. Photographs of all my properties, documentation of my art sales, bank statements showing a net worth that would make even William's eyes bulge. 10 years of success, carefully hidden from the people who said I'd never succeed. "Perhaps we could start a GoFundMe," Mom suggested desperately. "Surely our friends would help." "Absolutely not," William snapped. "The embarrassment would kill my reputation in the banking industry." I almost laughed. He was so worried about his reputation while sitting in a house that was weeks away from foreclosure. "What about selling some assets?" Sophia suggested. "The vacation house in the Hamptons?" Dad shook his head. "Already leveraged to save the company last quarter. We need something more substantial, at least $5 million to keep everything afloat." I cleared my throat. Everyone turned to look at me, probably expecting some naive suggestion about selling artwork. "I might be able to help," I said quietly. William actually laughed. "Unless you've got a secret trust fund we don't know about, I don't think your coffee shop tips are going to solve this." I stood up slowly, smoothing my Armani suit. "Actually, I'd like to show you something. Could we all take a little drive?" "Lily, this isn't the time for one of your artistic adventures," Dad said warily. "Trust me," I replied, pulling out my phone. "Clara, bring the car around to my parents' house." Yes, the Bentley. 20 minutes later, we stood in the lobby of the Morrison Building, one of the most prestigious addresses in the city. My family looked uncomfortable, clearly wondering why we were there. "Lily, what are we doing here?" Mom asked nervously. "We can't just walk into." The security guard stepped forward. "Good evening, Ms. Chen. Your private elevator is ready." My family's faces registered confusion as I led them to a gold-doored elevator that went straight to the penthouse. The same elevator they'd probably assumed was for the building's wealthy tenants. "How do you have access to this?" William demanded. The doors opened directly into my private office suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city skyline. Original artworks, many bearing my signature, adorned the walls. A scale model of the city sat on a massive table, with certain buildings highlighted in gold. "Because I own the building," I said simply, walking to my desk. along with 30 other properties in the city. The silence was absolute. Mom sank into one of the Italian leather chairs. Dad's face had gone pale. William looked like he'd swallowed his tongue. That's impossible, Sophia finally managed. You're an artist. You work at a coffee shop. I laughed. I've never worked at a coffee shop in my life. That was just the story you all chose to believe because it fit your narrative about artists being failures. I pressed a button on my desk. A hidden panel in the wall slid open, revealing a series of screens displaying financial data, property holdings, and investment portfolios. My first painting sold for $50,000 during my senior showcase, the one Dad refused to attend. I pulled up images of my early works. By the time you kicked me out, I was already represented in 3 major galleries. My pieces now sell for millions. William stammered, but we never saw. Because I sold them under a professional name. Chen Dynasty Art. Perhaps you've heard of it. I enjoyed watching his face as recognition hit. Chen Dynasty was one of the most prestigious modern art brands in the world. But that's just the art, I continued, clicking through screens. I invested everything I earned. Started with small properties, then worked my way up. The Morrison Building was my first major acquisition. Dad, your company's rent checks. They've been coming to me for the last 3 years. Dad had to sit down. The Riverside development project you lost last month. I own that too. Through a subsidiary, of course. Just like I own the Carlton Hotel chain, the Riverside Marina, and yes, the bank that's about to foreclose on this house. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. The house, you knew? I know everything. I pulled up their financial records. Every bad investment, every failed project, every desperate attempt to keep the company afloat. I've watched it all. Why didn't you say anything? Sophia whispered. Why should I? When have any of you ever shown interest in my life? When have you ever asked about my work without mockery or condescension? I turned to Dad. When did you ever once say you were sorry for throwing me out? The silence that followed was heavy with a decade of regret. But now you need help. Now, suddenly, family matters. I sat down behind my desk, enjoying how the roles had reversed. $5 million. That's what you need to save everything. Lily, Dad began, his voice hoarse. Wait. I held up my hand. I'm not finished. Your company isn't worth saving in its current state. The management is poor, the projects are substandard, and the reputation is shot. But the name still has value, and you have expertise that could be useful. I pulled out a contract that had been prepared hours ago. Here's my offer. I'll clear all your debts, not just $5 million, but all $23 million you actually owe. In exchange, the company becomes a subsidiary of Chen Enterprises. You'll remain as a consultant, but all financial and operational decisions will go through my team. $23 million? Mom gasped. But how did you know? I told you. I own the bank. I smiled. I also own this building, that coffee shop you thought I worked at, and about $4 billion worth of other assets you never knew about. William, the investment banker, looked like he was about to faint. $4 billion? Would you like to see the portfolio breakdowns? I offered sweetly. I'm sure you find them fascinating, especially the part where I bought out your bank's major competitor last year. Dad picked up the contract with trembling hands. All this time, you were building an empire while we thought. Why you thought I was a failure? I finished for him. Yes. Funny how assumptions work, isn't it? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at my city. You know what the hardest part was? Not the work, not the long hours or the risks or the constant pressure. It was sitting at family dinners, listening to you all talk about success as if you had some special claim to it. Watching you pat yourselves on the back while treating me like a cautionary tale. Turning back to them, I continued, every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every family gathering. You all flaunted your achievements while pitying my supposed poverty. Did any of you ever once ask what I was actually doing with my art? Did you ever look up my professional name, or visit a gallery, or show any interest at all? The shame on their faces was answer enough. The contract is simple, I said, returning to business. You get a fresh start, but on my terms. No more independent decisions, no more risky ventures. You work for me now. All of you, if you want to stay in the family business. All of us, Sophia squeaked. Oh yes. William, your bank is about to undergo a merger. With my bank, you'll be offered a vice president position. A real one, not the inflated title you have now. Sophia, your real estate license will come in handy in my property management division. Starting at entry level, of course. They sat there, stunned as the full implications sank in. You have 24 hours to decide, I concluded. The house goes to auction next week if you don't accept. Oh, and one more thing. I picked up my supposedly fake designer bag. Everything I'm wearing, everything I own, it's all real, including this office, this building, and the car waiting downstairs. Mom found her voice at last. Why show us now? Why not just let us fail? I considered the question carefully, because 10 years ago, you taught me a valuable lesson. You showed me that the only person I could rely on was myself. That success isn't about names or connections or family approval. It's about vision and determination and believing in yourself when no one else will. Opening my desk drawer, I pulled out an old photograph. It showed a younger me standing proudly next to my first painting to sell at a gallery. I kept it all these years, my own private celebration since I had no one to share it with. I built all of this without your help, without your approval, and without your love. I proved every doubt, every dismissal, and every mockery wrong. And now you need my help. I smiled. That's not just success. That's justice. The next day, they signed the contracts. All of them. The family business became a small part of my larger empire, and my parents and siblings became my employees. It was a difficult transition, especially for William, who had to adjust to having his failure artist sister as his boss. The family dynamic shifted dramatically. Holiday dinners became interesting affairs, with my siblings and parents trying to navigate our new professional relationship. No more condescending comments about art degrees, no more smug superiority from William about his banking career, no more patronizing offers to help me find real work. Instead, they watched in amazement as I continued to expand my empire. The coffee shop they thought I worked at, it became a chain of luxury cafes across the country. My art, now displayed in major museums worldwide. The struggling artists they dismissed had become the family's salvation. Dad tried to apologize once, a few months after the takeover. I was wrong, he said quietly during a board meeting break. About everything. I just nodded. Yes, you were. But being wrong taught me how to be strong. So in a way, you helped me succeed. Just not in the way you intended. Sometimes success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revealing your success immediately, but waiting until the perfect moment when they need you more than you ever needed them. Now, every morning, I walk into my office in the building they never knew I owned, run the empire they never knew I built, and smile at the thought of how assumptions can cost people everything. Because while they were busy underestimating me, I was busy becoming unstoppable.